Welcome to I Need to Know Show, a production of the Public Trust Network. This show was created to inform Americans about the concerns and particular needs of the Puerto Rican community throughout the United States. However, our audience is not Puerto Ricans. Rather, the American public at large, who actually have the power that Puerto Ricans do not have. That is, to decide if Puerto Rico can be treated equally as all Americans under the Constitution. What, you may ask? This is not my opinion. This is what the United States Supreme Court has stated in several court decisions over the years. Many of you have heard of Puerto Rico, but many Americans do not even know where it is. What is sad to note is ever since World War I, Puerto Ricans have fought in every conflict around the world to support this nation and its principles of freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. Puerto Ricans have fought in Korea, Kuwait, Iraq, and around the world so that these people have the right to vote in a democracy of their making for their nation. Yet, Puerto Ricans on the island cannot vote themselves for their president or to have a voting voice in the Congress that sends them to war. In fact, the Supreme Court of the United States has clearly stated that Puerto Rico is governed by what is called the Territorial Clause of the Constitution and is governed by Congress. And Congress controls what rights and privileges apply to Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans on the island. The Equal Protection Clause, which covers you and me, does not apply to Puerto Ricans on the island. This program is designed to educate Americans on this issue and to create a national platform for stateside Puerto Ricans to discuss this issue and bring it to their senators and congressmen. Puerto Ricans on the island are American citizens, but are not treated like American citizens. We do not advocate for statehood or independence. That is for the citizens of the island to determine. But we Americans do have a voice on how our Constitution is applied. Well, welcome to I Need to Know Radio. This is Anthony Suarez once again, and with me now is Montilla, Joel Montilla, also the president of the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida. Joel, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Joel. We're gonna. As indicated, this is a show. Last week we did the president of the bar of Illinois, and next week we'll be doing the president of the bar of New York, and then Puerto Rico bar. There are two of them over there. It's a series of interviews of bar presidents, as well as some of the lecturers and sponsors, actually, of the upcoming National Puerto Rican Bar Association conference that we're having in the end of September. So this is a series of shows all under I Need to Know, and a new organization we call the Public Trust Network, which is going to be the channel for this event. I Need to Know being one of the channels of the Public Trust Network. But one of our interests, of course, is this issue of Puerto Rico, the status of Puerto Rico and the interest of the Puerto Rican community throughout the United States. So we had a great interview last week with the president of the Puerto Rican Bar of Illinois, and today with you, as I indicated, we'll go on forward. So let's start with the motivation of your personal motivation. I'd like to know what choked you decided to undertake this responsibility, because you're a lawyer in private practice. You have your practice. You have a lot of work to do, but taking on the responsibilities of a bar association and going down to Miami, because the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida is just that. It is a statewide. It's not just in Orlando. So this is a big responsibility that you're undertaking. So I'm motivated. What motivates you to undertake that kind of responsibility?
Great question. There is a level of upholding nuestra cultura, and I do believe that there is a time where the baton is being passed, and there's a new community, a new demographic that is stepping on the same footsteps that were before we came, that were made before we came. And so the reason I chose Apodit is servitude. I believe that we are not a monolithic group as a Puerto Rican population, but there is a lot of interest and desire to serve our communities and keep the culture alive while we serve our communities. I've been volunteering with the bar since I was a law student. Under you, I did my externship under Anthony and trained under Anthony, and so I saw a lot of the that was my awakening. I grew up here in Florida. I didn't grow up on the island, but I in working with you all, I understood the need to have that dialogue between the different states as well as the island, and people who wanted to enforce that community and that culture. So for me, it was watching what you all did, guys like you and Richard, and the people who have served, and lending those skill sets to promote the greater good, to keep the relay race going. And I'm willing to take on the responsibility in making sure that not only does my presidency reflect those that come before me, but lay a path down for those that want to come after. So kind of like a social responsibility, both in the efforts of those that have come before me, but also manteniendo la alerta y la actividad dentro de la comunidad y sobreviviendo la cultura también.
Yeah, one of the things that always comes up in conversations is whether or not the Puerto Rican Bar Association really needs to exist. There is the Hispanic Bar Association. It's rather large. The National Hispanic Bar goes from coast to coast. And one of my reasons why, when I was president of the bar, why I thought that it was important to maintain the Puerto Rican bar is because the Hispanic bar of the national bar is concentrated heavily on immigration issues, which is an important issue, obviously, for the Latino community. Um, Puerto Ricans, however, are natural Americans, and they don't have the immigration problem, but they have their own problem. That is, of course, the status issue of the island. And so, if we just merged into the Hispanic bar, the question of Puerto Rico's status as an island, as a citizens that have less rights than other citizens, would get lost in the debate, and that's why we needed to maintain a separate identity and to ensure that the issues of Puerto Rico are in the forefront. And so that is one of the reasons why, as you indicated, keeping ourselves culturally in tune, as well as politically in tune with the island, is so important to what we do. So with that in question, you know that we have this upcoming conference. It's a national conference, and what we mean by that is that there are Puerto Rican bar associations in other states, and all of them are struggling to do the right thing as they perceive it in their communities. So the first question I'd like to ask you, actually, I guess is the second question. What is the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida? What vision do you have for the Puerto Rican Bar Association in Florida in connection to whatever project you think is important for the community?
Great follow up question. In learning what's been done before me with the presidents of like Marie Mason, yourself included, I started to formulate what is it about the impact of our communities. Where is it that my presidency could stand on the shoulders of those that have come before me? And the Florida Puerto Rican Bar is focused, the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida, we're really focused on emphasizing and strengthening the awareness as it relates to the judiciary. And that has to do with the judges. On the county level, circuit level, appellate level, Florida level, Supreme Court level. And the reason why is because in talking to community organizers and the guys and women who've been around before my time, there seems to be this approach to issues that may come down from the, like you said, immigration issues from Tallahassee, from DC. At the end of the day, our communities are more likely to encounter a judge Right now, you go to any one of these courthouses and you
Right.
walk in and you realize who's coming to the line and who's sitting before a judge making these decisions. And so the equalizers of our communities are attorneys, but attorneys exist because they present to the judges. So if you look at organizations or state or community initiatives, there's a lot of focus on the legislators and the kind of law they passed. And Tony, you know as much as I do, the laws could pass, but it's case law that starts to shape our societies and our communities. You may have a law that passes down or an ordinance from a local municipality or a county level or state level or federal level. But the reality of it is, what good is a citation to a law if you don't have case law to back it up?
Right.
And so the case law is decided before the judges. And so there's a lot of people in our communities, whether it's a child custody issue, eviction, mortgage issue, landlord tenant issue, DUIs, our communities and the trajectory of their lives is truly impacted by the bench. And so we made a focus with the work that's been done with the organization already is we do a judiciary nomination committee, which the Puerto Rican bar nominates and has interviews. So instead of that being something we do under my presidency, I want to make that the focal point. So it's the only endorsement we give,
Right.
and helping and educating and empowering, whether the bench resembles more of our communities or if the bench understands our communities. Those are impactful decisions that are made every single day in these courtrooms that change the trajectory of people's lives. So we're really focused on the judicialship and branding ourselves, further branding ourselves with organizational saying we're the lawyers and we have a focus on the judiciary. In other words, we give endorsement, the only endorsement we give. So my goal and my work so far has been to strengthen that, to bring
Right.
awareness that as we all fill in the ballots, sure the politicians on there, but we all get to the judicialship and there's all these judges that most of us don't even know about.
I
And
mean, I
they're
think
making
this is important. This is important to point out because in Florida, judges have to run for office. In a lot of states, judges are appointed. For example, Puerto Rico judges are appointed. They're not a. You cannot vote for a judge, right? New York has a split. Most judges are elected, but because it's a one-party system, whoever the Democratic Party selects for the judge, that's the one who's going to win. So it's an election, but it's really a selection by the Democratic Party within the state. And so in every state, and I don't know how they do elect them in or select them in Chicago, Illinois, but it's different in every place. So in Florida, since judges are elected, it's important, as you just said, that those judges whom nobody knows anything about them, they're running without any party affiliation. They're running just with their name. Someone knows what they stand for, what their history is. Your bar association is willing to screen them, decide, and then give an endorsement. Not every bar association does that. This bar association goes through that trouble. That's a lot of trouble, a lot of work to get the people to take time out for their practices, to interview these guys, and then issue an endorsement that could make a main difference in the election of judges, whom, for the most part, get elected with just a couple of thousand votes across the whole majority of the two counties in Orange County and Osceola County. It's not that many people vote. They don't go down ballot. They'll vote for the governor, but they won't go down a ballot down judiciary unless they have a reason. And what the Puerto Rican Bar Association in Florida, through your vision, is going to emphasize giving that kind of endorsement so that the people know that someone has looked at their credentials, that it has some affiliation with their intent. So that I think that's what you're describing to me, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's
So
important to remember, as I said before, these laws get passed. They all get passed. SB 1718. These laws get passed, but it's the judiciary that hears these arguments and further develops the law.
Right.
So the laws coming down are one step. So yeah, we're gonna not only emphasize the vetting process, but we are going to try to bring awareness to the bench to pay attention to what's going on the bench. That's correct.
Right.
Awareness and activation.
Now, one of the things I know that you also have on your agenda, because I happen to have attended your board meeting a couple of weeks ago, is the question of the legislature. Because in Florida, we did have a day which was called Puerto Rico Day, which is basically a lobbying day, where people, Puerto Ricans from around the state, will go to Tallahassee to meet with the state legislators. That also is going to be one of your bar association's priorities, going back to Tallahassee and participating in that lobbying effort to change law. Is that correct?
That's correct. We've been able to identify the pillars that this organization. Just a point of reference, the organization has completed or celebrated its 20th anniversary this year. So, thank you to the likes of yourself, Tony, and those that come. But in 20 years, you're correct. There's a lot of things the bar has done. The goal is to stay consistent as we educate and empower the younger generation to get involved. That we had to figure out what are our pillars. Our pillars are based on our organizational structure. We have to focus on membership, which is the bars, the Puerto Rican lawyers, those who want to be allies with the Puerto Rican initiatives. But then, correct, we have the judiciary, which is focused on the judges that we've done and the judiciary nominating committee. But then we also have government relations. And that government relations is both on the local level. We have the vice presidents of Broward, Miami who attend. And then we also have a statewide and federal initiative. And part of that statewide initiatives is what the Tallahassee that you're referencing. And the bar has been involved with that. We're going to continue to be involved with that, strengthening all pillars of the organization. That's correct.
Right. All right. So now, we know you got that prong approach, that you have the judiciary. You're going to be working with the legislature. You're going to be working on the issues of Puerto Rico, because with the upcoming national convention, we hope to be able to, and when I say we, I am chairperson of the Legal Services Clinic of the Puerto Rican community of Florida. That is a non-for-profit law firm, which we started. When I say me, the Puerto Rican Bar Association started after Hurricane Maria. So we started this effort because there were, in Central Florida, over 50,000 Puerto Ricans that migrated here as a result of the hurricane, and many of them came with nothing but the clothes on their back, and all sorts of legal issues were there. And we, at that point, the Bar Association determined that, well, we didn't want to do what everybody else was doing, collecting Pampers and food and sending money to Red Cross. We wanted to do something that lawyers could do, and such we created the Legal Services Clinic, which helped at this point since 2017 thousands of people who've given consultation, and we've assisted them. Those people that don't have the recourse. It's not limited to Puerto Ricans. It started because of the hurricane, but of course, the Legal Services Clinic assists everyone. And so we are now, I say we, the legal clinic, along with all the other bar associations across the country, are getting together to try to create a platform where all of us can talk to each other, network with each other, and assist each other with multi-jurisdictional problems, right? Someone comes from Puerto Rico, they're here, but they still have problems in Puerto Rico. They may go to Chicago, they still have problems in Puerto Rico. So it's back and forth, multi-jurisdictional problems, multi-jurisdictional people, that the husband's in Chicago, the wife is in New York, and the children here in Florida. Wow, that stuff happens. And so we need to have this type of cooperation. But very importantly, the connection, why we call ourselves Puerto Rican Bar as opposed to Hispanic Bar, or the Workmen's Compensation Bar, or the, one of these specialty bars that specializes in bankruptcy or something like that, is the connection to Puerto Rico. So, and as you indicated in your opening statement about cultural ties, one of the problems that I experienced, and I like for your opinion on this, is that while we identify ourselves as the Puerto Rican Bar and we're Puerto Ricans, many of us don't know. We weren't born in the island. We don't know much about the island. We were taught about the Indians of the Seminole Indians or the Algonquin Indians of New York. We didn't learn anything about the Taino Indians. This is an education process that we as individual persons have to try to culturally understand the culture of the island, as well as the political issues and legal issues of the island. So, do you have any plans or any thoughts about that kind of issue, about what to do, if anything, about the cultural ties to the island?
I think it's important. Who doesn't like a good Puerto Rican, fiesta? I mean, it's unanimous. People play, So I think that that's a good point in terms of being culturally relevant and staying consistent, as many refer to the diaspora, right? As we tend to integrate ourselves into community, but we all have those traditions. We all associate with the traditions when it's a holiday. What gets put, what gets put, what you do, what kind of music's being played. All that stuff brings the excitement, the joy of who we are as a people. And you're correct that there is a level of, we are not monolithic, we are very diverse in ourselves. And so I think having the conversation about what are our commonalities. We are a people. And, the term that came to mind when you were speaking was, there's power in numbers, and there's a power in the largest community. And so I think that it's important to have those conversations. I think it's important with our brothers and sisters on the island to be understanding that this is. I have uncles that are still in Bayamon, right? It's a part of who I am. It's part of my family, and not only that, but it is, as much as we care about the issues for Georgia, right? If something's happening in Georgia, you see it on the news. Something's happening in California, you hear about it here in Florida. Something happens in Florida, you hear about it. It's Puerto Rico is just that. They're part of us. They're our community.
Yep.
To understand, better serve, is the level of activating for our culture, but also developing and adapting to changes that we are experiencing. And by we get together, like you described, because share opportunities and share connections.
Now, there's which leads us into the last sections here that of question I have for you is that Puerto Rico, now there are more Puerto Ricans in the state of Florida than any other location, more than in New York, more than Illinois, Connecticut. I mean, there statistically, I understand from the studies that our professors are going to be presenting during the coming conference. There are about 5 million Puerto Ricans on the mainland, and about 3.2 million that live on the island. So there are actually more Puerto Ricans or persons who identify themselves as Puerto Rican on the mainland than they are on the island. And so that means in the state of Florida, we're about 6% of Puerto Ricans as a population of Florida. There's over 1.1 million Puerto Ricans living in the state of Florida. That means there's lots of changes politically and lots of changes. Now, just yesterday or the day, you and I were running around somewhere in South Orange County, and we were commenting on the explosion of Puerto Ricans in that area. Describe for us, what you have seen the years since you graduated from law school and took on this responsibility of representing people. You're representing clients. You're seeing the growth. Tell us about the areas that you've seen and the growth you have seen within the Puerto Rican population.
One word: I-4 corridor. I think that's a term that everybody's come to know, and there's just been an influx between the Polk. I noticed a lot of in the I-4 corridor, starting from the Polk County area, heading north into Osceola, Orange County. Yes, there's been a migration in terms of the Puerto Ricans from when I first started. When I first started practicing in 2016, there was a lot of, I think it was very diverse. There's a lot of, South American, Caribbeans that I represented, pero ever since the 2018, 2019 and Hurricane Maria, I think a overwhelming amount of like maybe 80 to 85% of the clients that I now serve are Puerto Rican or come from the island. So there's been an influx in those areas, people who move in those rural areas to come down and own a piece of land, especially in the South Orange and North Osceola. But it's, like I mentioned before, it's not monolithic. It's people who are coming and adapting and learning that we are part of it, and not only that, but the learning how business is done here, and the laws and regulations versus on the island. There's a huge culture shock. So the needs of the community for education and empowerment has grown with it. But I've seen a substantial growth in the I-4 corridor in areas up to Seminole County. So there's a substantial growth, and with it have come the needs of the community as well. So there's been an exponential growth in the need for services, and the need for lawyers, and the need for other professions that supplement either people's lives or as they get adapted to our new community. So it's been an exciting, I would call it an explosive growth for sure.
In research and preparation for this interview, I ran into an article that quoted this. I like your comment on it. It says, um, Puerto Ricans have a hard time finding jobs, housing, and transportation, and it's difficult to adjust into Central Florida as compared to South Florida. What's your how would you comment on that? What's your thought on those on that representation by that reporter?
I think there's some truth to it, and I think it has to do with we as a community having the resources, and quite frankly, educating about those resources, but above all, managing those resources. I did a panel with the Puerto Rican Summit, and this Small Business Administration was there, and they were saying how much resources and opportunity they have, but that people are not they were there to promote and say, hey, these resources are available. So I agree that there is an influx of needs for services and resources. There has not been a met there's not been it has not been met with, this is the resources, this is how you go about it. The summit itself, in terms of having the SBA talk about it, I think that what the reporter indicates is true. I think there's been the growth. Miami has the infrastructure, for a lack of a better term, to they're a big city. We're like a little big city, right? Central Florida metropolitan area, and we're
Right.
developing now. I mean, we're growing at 700,000 expected by 2050. I think the differences are we're calling people in, hey, be a part of this community, but the actual resources and infrastructure to say this is how you can maximize those resources, I do believe it's lacking. And I do believe it has to do with which organizations, like the convention, is putting out the initiatives like the legal clinic to say, hey, we're here, we understand the needs of our community, we know how to access those resources, put them on a platform and accessible and digestible for our communities. I believe more of that's necessary, but I do believe that there's a challenge in understanding that, number one, politics is not the same, right? When you get here, it's not. If you thought this way in Puerto Rico, then this is how it's different, and not only that, with businesses as well. So I do agree that there is a more challenged way of our community adapting and accessing those resources. But again, that's why the bar and the legal services clinic exists, is to help, where a wholesale or a whole approach that on a platform that makes it easier for our communities to engage with. So I would
Well,
echo that is challenging.
well, we've been talking to Joel Montilla, president of the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida. If you need to reach, and you're in Florida, you need a lawyer, Joel Montilla is got the resources, got the access to the 100. Well, I think we mentioned you had 208 people and on your mailing list there. So you have access to these lawyers. You need something, you can call the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida. Joel will be able to get in contact with any of the lawyers that have the resources and the members of the bar, and you could reach them at the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida website or Facebook. I'm sure they do that. And because Joel Montilla is a lawyer here in Central Florida. Joel, thank you so much for joining us on this day. I look forward to working with you in the coming year of your presidency, and then, of course, the upcoming National Conference of Puerto Rican Bar Association. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it, Tony. Thank you very much.